Hi, everyone, and welcome to Principles of Economics. This course is about how the economy works and the basic ways to explain it. So, how does the economy work? There is no single best answer to this question, right? And it's difficult to answer it because the economy consists of many moving parts at the same time. Hundreds of governments, millions of firms, billions of individuals, and that are part of households. And they all have different goals and face different constraints. And as a result of these, the interactions of these goals and constraints of individual participants, we have this $100 trillion enormous entity, which we call the global economy. And knowing the entire global economy is not possible. However, it's our job, and that's the job of all and any economist to think about how some of these many parts work individually and how they interact to produce this enormous value for the entire world. So some of the questions we address as economists are, for example, how did we end up living the way we do? And what made this generation live better or worse than the previous generations? So, for example, the average person now in most countries across the globe lives much better than their predecessors, at least in monetary terms. However, while the world was getting richer, it also became dirtier, more unequal, and politically more divisive than a generation ago. And explaining what led to those economic and environmental and political changes is part of our job as economists. Then there are billions of individuals and firms and hundreds of governments who drive the process of economic growth. And we want to know how these guys make choices, right? What are their guiding principles of action? Why did they make a certain decision? Of course, we'll never know if each of them made the right decision for themselves, but we can think about some common traits behind each individual action. And that's why we'll often talk about a typical or a representative firm and a representative individual. However, taken separately, the decisions of most firms and individuals rarely make a difference to anyone in isolation, right? They start making a difference when individuals meet other individuals and firms meet other places in places in firms meet other firms in places where they can interact, right? And those places are called markets. And we want to know what guides marketplace interactions. So there are certain rules of engagement that determine the outcomes from the interactions between people and firms, and between private agents and governments. And those rules also shape the outcomes of interactions. And that's why we want to know how changing the rules of the game changes the outcome of these interactions. So sometimes we also want to know what happens when governments change the rules of the game. Governments do step in sometimes because the outcomes of the private interactions are not always desirable, right? And sometimes governments don't change the rules of the game, even if such change would be desirable. And our job as economists is to think about government interventions and how those interventions make things better or worse, sometimes for economic agents. Which brings me to the last big question we address as economists. How can governments do more to improve the way people live? And the answer to this question is not only in the economics domain. We need to think about how the economy interacts with the environment and what the social consequences of those interactions are. So, what's our approach to tackling the big problems we outlined above? We'll normally use three basic steps. Each week, we'll identify a big issue that society is confronting now or has faced in the past. We do that to give you an immediate link between what you study and the real world. And then we'll develop a basic theory to explain what we see in the real world. But that's not all. Finally, equipped with the theory, we'll go back to the facts and ask the question, is the theory that we just discussed relevant today? Is it any good, or it needs to be adjusted to explain the changes in the real world that we and our people live in? There are numerous advantages to what we do in this module over how economics was done for you at the A level in the UK and in high schools across the globe. And I believe the crucial advantage is that you guys get to operate in exactly the same way professional economists do. We see a problem, we look at an explanation, and we test our explanation using real world data. And sometimes we also offer policy solutions to help solve the initial problem. And this is what modern teaching of principles of economics is about. So how are we going to do it then? First, you need to watch the weekly videos at home before each lecture. The videos outline the basics of what we are going to talk about during the lecture and the rest of the week. Then, the weekly videos also come with slides, and you can use those slides as talking points, not as reading, as talking points only. After we watch the videos and go over the slides, you need to read the textbook chapter. That's crucial. Then do the practice questions associated with each chapter. The questions are important because they help you learn, right? After each live lecture, then comes a very important part of your week. That's the weekly homework. Together with the practice questions, the weekly homeworks form significant part of your learning in this module. They don't directly contribute to your final grade. However, they'll be very helpful in forming the skills you need to excel in your exams. And that's why we call these assessments formative. They form the skills that you need. So start early, don't miss the deadline, as you'll not be able to submit late. The solutions to the more difficult parts of these assignments, most likely the homeworks, will come on the seminar right after the lecture on the following week. During the seminars, you will have the chance to ask additional questions, reflect on what you learned during the week, and hopefully gear your new superpowers to solve some important societal problems. Now, the seminar will close the week off, after which you'll be able to watch the new weekly videos for the next week. And that's the plan. So where can you find all those videos, the class presentations, the textbook chapter, the seminar materials, and the practice questions? Everything is on Moodle for you, right? Our learning management system, that's Moodle. If you haven't gone on Moodle, now is the time to log on and have a look around, get familiar with the material. And when you become familiar, I strongly suggest that you go and create a student account at the core econ platform. This is where you'll find your textbook for Principles of Economics this year. One of the great things about our textbook is that it's completely free and it's 100% online. And you can use it on any device that you study on the go. So this is great that Core Econ has enabled you to read the textbook just like any other app. So many of you are also interested in how you will be assessed, and that's of course a very good question. This is the structure of assessment, so this here. Now, first of all, notice that even if you do these practice questions and homeworks each week, you don't get anything back from them. Again, this is a simplistic overview of what you get from them, as those will be very helpful when you prepare for your actual quizzes and exams. So, for example, the goal of each weekly homework is to make your work harder, to master the material and dig deeper into the more applied nature of economic models that we discuss in class. Out of these 18 to 20 homeworks you submit, none will be marked. And this is the essence of formative assessments. However, you'll be able to get feedback on them during seminars and feedback in office hours, right? And there is another important reason we give you these homeworks. You will face very similar, not the same, but very similar problems on your final exam. Please recall that what I told you during the induction week. Although the first year academic performance doesn't matter for your degree classification, it does matter a lot in many other ways. And importantly, it builds studying habits and confidence for the second year, which will already play a major role in your degree classification. So if the practice questions on the website and the homeworks you submit using Moodle don't matter for your grades, what are those things that will actually matter? So what will matter is what we call the summative assessments. First, you'll have quizzes, and after each 5-week cycle in the term, you will sit down for an hour in front of a computer and answer mostly multiple choice questions on the material covered in the previous 5 weeks. This is to make sure you stay on top of the material. You'll have just one attempt at each 10% quiz, and the questions will be drawn from a large database. And then you'll have the final exam, worth 60% of your final grade. It will contain questions that are like those you see on each one of these weekly homework assignments, and that's why it's crucial to do these assignments and submit them. Without them, you're essentially forfeiting the final exam preparation, and that's why you need to study on a weekly basis. Right? Cramming for the exam at the very end of the term and right before the final exam will not do you any favors because the material is just too much to cram. If you plan on cramming material before the exam instead of working regularly during the term, you're setting yourselves up for failure. Remember, your academic performance, that's your grades, are highly inertial. If you start weak, it will be very hard to reverse that trend going forward. And if you start strong, it's going to be easier to keep the momentum going forward. So please, as a person who's been there, I advise you, don't slack, start strong, work hard and work regularly and keep your head down for the rest of the term. Because sooner rather than later, you will need that momentum, you will need that confidence to keep going and to keep at it. And of course, your lecturers and seminar leaders, including me, will be there for you every step of the way during our weekly office hours and feedback hours. So what are the topics that we'll cover this term? In week 1, we'll examine how the global economy looks like today and how we got here. We'll dig into a brief history of the world from an economic standpoint. In week 2, we'll have a closer look at what determines technological progress, because technological progress is so important to understanding economic growth. We can't really move forward without understanding what technological progress looks like and how we came to advance our technologies. And in week 3, we'll open the black box of decision making. Right? We'll become familiar with what makes people tick and why and how they make decisions. We'll understand their incentives and constraints and determine what's best for them. But then we'll stop analyzing the individual as a lonely animal sitting on the edge of the forest and exchanging nuts for berries with other human beings, as one Nobel Prize famously put it. This is not how the economy works, is it? All actions that we take are happening in an environment where others do the best they can as well as we do, right? So we'll discuss it sometimes better than we do. so we'll discuss how to determine what's best for us, but given what's best for others as well. And this question will be key to understanding the 4th weekly topic. Week 5, we'll see that human interaction happens in an environment shaped by incentives and constraints that are imposed by others on us. And these are the rules of the game shaping human interactions. We'll analyze how changing the rules of the game changes the outcomes from social interactions, and we'll see that the same people with the same goals and value systems will achieve very, very different economic outcomes depending on how the rules of the game are structured around them. And this is, by the way, will be a prelude to understanding why some countries are rich today and why others are poor, rich and poor. That's another key question that we'll try addressing. And the key to understanding this is going to be the rules, the differences in the rules of the game. That will conclude the first part of the term, and then in the second part of the term, we'll bring in the firm. We'll look at the firm from 2 vantage points. On the one hand, the firm is a place where 3 types of economic agents meet, right? The owners, the managers, and the employees. The firm is a place in which these three agents interact. And like we'll see, those interactions are shaped by the constraints that each one of those agents has. So unlike in a traditional A-level economics, we'll look into what happens within the firm rather than outside the firm. On the other hand, however, firms don't just exist to provide a platform for social conflict between owners, managers, and employees, although these conflicts are part of everyday life. Firms exist primarily to make a profit, right? And which firms generate on the marketplace. So we'll talk about markets and how they shape the profits that firms make. And as you can see, the first term of this one-year module will be more about individual decision making. And the spring term will give you a chance to zoom out from the individual decision making. You will go for a bird's eye view on important markets such as the labor market and the financial markets. And this is because without the proper functioning of those markets, the economy will not be able to grow. And we'll also learn more about how the economy works as a single entity where entire sectors such as households and firms interact as sectors, and governments tax them to provide certain number and range of public services. And sometimes, even if market participants do the best they can, such as households do the best they can, the markets will generate certain failures. We'll study those failures and we'll see why they lead to certain socially inferior outcomes. This will open the floor for limited but vital policy intervention in areas which, if left on their own, will lower the quality of our lives. And that's why we need to discuss them. We'll also discuss how our actions affect the environment and what we can do to mitigate our own impact. We'll close the second term with a focus on special topics such as technological progress, inequality, and the environment. And those topics will be a primer, by the way, for a whole range of third-year special modules that you can sign up in a couple of years. So here's where you can find me next term. I work in Horton, office 213, which is located on the ground floor to the right of the main entrance. You can send me an email anytime. However, please note that I typically reply during my feedback and office hours, which happen twice a week. You can check out my latest research on my personal website and my additional professional interests on X, which is formerly Twitter, or LinkedIn. In the spring, you will have different lecturers, who will tell you more about how to contact them separately. And last but not least, a crucial part of our teaching team are the seminar leaders. We sometimes call them teaching assistants or TAs, and we'll announce the TAs as soon as possible and post their contacts and office hours on Moodle as well. You'll be able to find them in the PhD office, which is also on the ground floor of Horton building. In fact, the entire economics department works in a Horton building. So I very much look forward to be working with you this term. Now go and see the other weekly videos and have a look around at Moodle. Thanks a lot. See you. Bye.